Alright, hello everyone. I think this is going to be a pretty short video. I hope we'll see how it goes. We've talked about functions and we now have talked about objects, and I just want to point some things out that maybe not quite so obvious, but some things you can do with objects and functions. And remember that objects are like any other data type. We can assign an object to a variable, and we can use objects as parameters and feed them into functions. And then what we'll see in the second part of this is that we can have functions that actually create objects and return them. So that's the whole point of this little segment here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the first code sample and paste it over into Sublime Text. Let's find our script tag. Here it is on line 105 or so. Let's see what we got. Okay, so I think this is review. We're just creating an object and assigning it to a variable here. So this object has three properties: name, midterm exam, and final exam. So this could be used for a program that keeps track of grades. And I guess just to simplify it, you're only going to have two exams throughout the whole course. So Sally got an 85 on the midterm exam and 92 on the final exam. Okay, let's go back over to the web page and let's go ahead and copy this function here that's in the second code block, and then we'll take a look at that. So I'm going to copy that, go back over to Sublime Text here, and I'm going to add that to what we put in before. Okay, and do some formatting here. I want to make sure my function is formatted properly. So we've got a function that we're declaring here. The name that I've given it is calculate student average. So, and I decided to give it a parameter name. It takes a parameter first of all, and I've given it a name of student obj. So what we're going to do is when we invoke this function, we're going to pass in this variable as a parameter. So when the function runs, we'll be able to refer to the variable as student obj within the body of the function. Okay, so let's go back over to the browser and let's go ahead, and now this little chunk of code right here, we're just going to invoke the function. And the other thing I want to note, let's just talk about what the function does real quick here too. Let me do some formatting. Okay, so in the body of the function here, these two lines of code make up the body of the function. We take the object that gets passed in, and we're going to access two of its properties. We're going to access the midterm exam and the final exam, and then we're going to divide that sum by 2. So what we're going for is we're trying to get an average of the two test scores. That's the purpose of this function. And then once we calculate that average, we're going to return it. So down here, when we actually invoke the function, the return value, the average, is going to be stored in this variable, and then we're going to log it. So let's go ahead and save this. Go back to the browser. I'll open up the developer tools so that we can see our console, and when I refresh here, there we go. There's the average, 88.5 for Sally. So the point is that you can pass objects in as parameters to functions, and then you can process the data that is contained in the object, like what we just did here. So now I'm going to talk about how you can create functions that actually return objects. Let's take a look at this code here. So what's going on here? I'm going to copy this, and I think I'll just go ahead and add it here. I think that's okay. I don't need to delete the other stuff. I'm going to fix the formatting, line everything up nice and neat. Let me just move this out of the way here. So what's going on here? It looks like we're creating 5 different objects that represent students. So we got Sally, Tom, Kelly, Martin, and Jesse, and their midterm and final exam scores all wrapped up in these objects. Now, if you look at this, there's quite a bit of redundant code here. So I could go ahead and create my objects like this, but what I want to show you is an alternative that's going to work better. You can use a function to create your objects, and you'll see that there's a lot less duplicate code. And what we'll do is the values that we want these objects to have will be passed in as parameters. So let's go look at that here. Here's the function that I want to show you. So I'll copy that. And I'll go ahead. I'm not sure if I should delete that last example. I'll just leave it there for now. So, and do some formatting here. Okay, so that looks good to me. So let's take a look at this function right here. So the function name is create student. It takes 3 parameters. It takes a student name, and then a parameter that I've called test1, and another parameter that I've called test2. Okay, and then what does it do? The first line of code in the body of the function, it declares a variable called student obj, and that variable is assigned an object. So here's the object that we're creating. Now look at this. So the name will be set to the parameter that gets passed in, the first parameter that gets passed in. The midterm exam, the value of that property is going to get set to the second parameter that gets passed in, which we called test1. And the final exam property will be assigned a value of whatever this test2 parameter is here. Okay, so now you can see that we haven't duplicated all this code that we have over here. So I mean, there's always a chance you could have a typo and misspell something. So instead of having to retype all those property names over and over again, I just have that code all in one place right here. But I'm using a function, and I'm feeding in the values that I want the object to have as parameters. And then the last line of code in the body of the function just simply returns the student object. So I'm going to go back over to the web page here, and now instead of creating those objects manually and duplicating our code, I can create them like this. So I'll copy this last chunk of code here, and down here, if we wanted to create records for 5 students for our program, so maybe we could keep track of the whole class. Here's a better way to do it than duplicating all this code up here. So now I just invoke the function, feed in the values, and the function returns a value. So we're assigning that return value to these variable names here. Okay, I told you this would be a short video, but just wanted to point out some things about objects and functions. So you can pass in objects as parameters to functions, and you can also have functions return objects, which is a powerful thing to do. And actually we'll be talking a lot more about objects, creating objects with functions in the future, not just in this class, but in the rest of the program.